In this video, a dissection review of the posterior leg and sole of the foot will be presented. This work was conceived by Carlos Andres Suarez-Quian and Joel Walensky. Carlos Andres Suarez-Quian will narrate the video. Let's start. From the posterior leg, we get the power to start standing up and begin our day. A functional posterior lower leg is vital to locomotion. Let's start the dissection of the posterior leg and plantar foot. The gastrocnemius muscle is the most prominent feature of the posterior leg once the superficial and deep fascia are removed. And as we follow the two bellies of the gastrocnemius inferiorly, we get to the Achilles tendon. To reveal the deeper structures of the posterior leg, the gastrocnemius is typically transected across its muscle bellies. First, we observe the popliteal vessels, the popliteal artery and vein, as they cross the popliteal fossa behind the knee. In addition, the two terminal branches of the sciatic nerve, the common fibular and tibial nerves, are discerned. And present deep to the gastrocnemius muscle is the soleus, which, with the gastrocnemius, forms the triceps surae muscle group. This group acts to plantar flex the foot. Traversing between the gastrocnemius and soleus is the plantaris tendon. This tendon emanates from a small muscle belly and is not thought to contribute much force to functional movement, but rather likely plays a role in monitoring knee and ankle movements. However, because of its relative redundancy in this region, the tendon can be harvested to serve as a donor tendon when needed. To reveal the deeper muscles of the posterior leg, the soleus must be reflected. Here, the soleus is being transected from its origin on the fibula. It also has an extensive origin from the tibia. With the soleus reflected and the two heads of the gastrocnemius reflected superiorly, we now see two of the extrinsic plantar flexor muscles, the flexor digitorum longus and the flexor hallucis longus. Hallucis refers to the big toe in the same way that pollicis referred to the thumb. As well, the posterior tibial artery becomes visible after reflecting the soleus. The posterior and anterior tibial arteries are terminal branches of the popliteal artery. We cannot see the anterior tibial artery from this view because it passes through the interosseous membrane to reach the anterior compartment of the leg. And finally, in this plate, the last structure we must focus on is the tibial nerve, traversing the leg on its way to the foot. The area containing the deep muscles of the posterior leg was dissected some more, and now we can see the following. The small muscle belly of the plantaris becomes apparent. We can also now see a third muscle of the deep group of muscles, the tibialis posterior, which is located between the flexor hallucis longus and the flexor digitorum longus, mentioned previously. Note also the continuation of the tibial nerve that will innervate all the muscles of the posterior compartment. The muscles, nerves, and vessels of the posterior leg pass into the foot posterior to the medial malleolus. The three deep muscles of the leg pass posterior to the medial malleolus in the front to back order of tibialis posterior, flexor digitorum longus, and flexor hallucis longus. The mnemonic to remember this order is Tom, Dick, and Harry. The posterior tibial vessels and tibial nerve pass through a space known as the tarsal tunnel, which is between the malleolus and the flexor retinaculum. Compression of the nerve in this tunnel results in tarsal tunnel syndrome, which is characterized by foot pain. We now turn to the sole of the foot. Underlying the skin of the plantar surface of the foot is a thick superficial fascia, and this in turn is underlain by a tough layer of deep fascia known as a plantar aponeurosis. The full extent of the plantar aponeurosis is shown here. To demonstrate it requires scraping of the tough superficial fascia of the foot, a time-consuming process. This aponeurosis can become inflamed, producing a common painful condition known as plantar fasciitis. Immediately deep to the plantar aponeurosis is the flexor digitorum brevis muscle. This muscle adheres to the aponeurosis and is typically difficult to separate from it. After removing the complete plantar aponeurosis, the flexor digitorum brevis becomes fully exposed. But in addition, we see two additional muscles, the abductor hallucis and the abductor digiti minimi. These muscles spread the big and little toes. Reflecting the flexor digitorum brevis reveals the tendons of the flexor digitorum longus and flexor hallucis longus muscles entering the foot. The medial plantar artery nerve, a terminal branch of the tibial nerve, can also be seen now. Additional cleaning reveals the individual tendons of the flexor digitorum longus, which inserts into the distal phalanges of the lateral four toes. Note also that there are plantar lumbricals. Two are clearly visible in this image, emanating from these tendons, in a similar manner to the lumbricals of the hand emanating from the flexor digitorum profundus tendons. We also see here a strange little muscle called the quadratus plantae, which acts to align the pull of the flexor digitorum longus tendons with the long axis of the foot. Typically, the quadratus plantae is cut to reveal deeper structures. Dissecting deeper into the sole of the foot now reveals the second terminal branch of the tibial nerve, the lateral plantar nerve, and vessels that accompany it into the lateral aspect of the foot. The nerve and accompanying vessels traverse across the foot. The neovascular bundle actually runs between the flexor digitorum brevis and quadratus plantae. Next, the tendon of the flexor digitorum longus is cut to reveal more of the intrinsic muscles of the foot. The origin of the transfer hurt of the adductor hallucis is now revealed as it runs across the surface of the foot. The oblique head is not shown in this image. And the tendon of the flexor hallucis longus, reaching towards the hallux to insert at the base of the distal phalanx, becomes clearly visible. Displacing the flexor hallucis longus tendon makes possible the observation of the flexor hallucis brevis, another deep muscle of the foot. Analogous to the hand, a flexor digiti minimi is present on the foot. In this final layer of muscles of the foot, we see the tendon of the fibularis longus reaching completely across the sole of the foot to insert into the first metatarsal. Understand why this muscle is a strong everter of the foot. Here, we can also see the adductor hallucis, which has two heads, and finally, some of the plantar and dorsal interossei are visible. This now concludes the dissection of the posterior leg and sole of the foot.